One of the most powerful aspects of Houdini is the ability to create HDAs or Houdini Digital Assets, not only for use inside of other programs through the use of the Houdini engine, but also just inside of Houdini itself. And the best part about these assets is once you make them, you can customize their parameter interface to basically do whatever you want and have settings be dynamic and change based on other parameters. And we're going to go over how we can achieve that right now. So real quick, I'm just going to show you what I have set up here as an example. So just a sphere with a mountain node and then a switch node that's going to control whether or not we actually use the remesh and whether or not the remesh's settings actually show up in our parameter interface. So let's go ahead and jump back up to the object level and I'll show you how this is done. So go ahead, go up to this cogwheel and click Edit Parameter Interface, and then we're just going to hide all of these settings right here because we don't need them. So just click this invisible once you have them selected, and then I'm going to go ahead and drag a folder into the root right there. I'm just going to call this settings, and as you can see right here we have this tab disable when and tab hide when. This is where we're going to input our function. If I just drag in other types of stuff, this has it, as well as these. Pretty much everything that's in here has the ability to be disabled or hidden based on other parameters. So how do we achieve this? Let's go ahead, we're going to dive into the nodes. First of all, if you don't know how to actually create parameter interfaces, all you have to do is dive into your node tree and select whatever node that you want, and we're going to select the parameter that we want, and we're just going to drag that into our folder. So into our settings folder, I'm just going to make this a label and we'll call it remesh ? And then I'll just copy and paste that as the name and just get rid of that underscore. So now if I click apply and jump back up to the object level, you can see we have that right there. But I just want to make it a simple toggle. So I'm going to make it a toggle right there and then click apply. And now you can see we just have a simple toggle that we can check or uncheck. And as I check it here, you can see that our object is going to change based off of our selection. Super simple. So let's go ahead. We're going to make our other settings now. So I'm going to drag in a separator here, and then I'm going to start inputting our remesh's parameters. So I want the iterations, the smoothing, and then edge lengths and target size. So as I look through all of these here, you can see that all of the disable and hide when are blank, except for this fourth one that we dragged in, which has a function already in there. So basically what this is saying is if the sizing, which is the name of the edge lengths parameter, you can see right there the sizing, if that is equal to adaptive, which is the second option, then it's going to hide the target size. So if I click apply, go back up to our object level, and I set this to adaptive, you're going to see our target size has disappeared, which is exactly what we want. So that's already pre-set up because that is already set up in the actual node itself. If you were to actually go into the parameter interface of the remesh nodes, you would see that it has the same thing in there. So dragging and dropping these settings into your own parameter interface is going to just copy their settings over, which is perfectly fine for what we want, except for we want to adjust that a little bit, because if I jump back into their object level, I click this remesh. Obviously, when I don't have this selected, then we're not doing any remeshing, so we don't want to actually see any of these settings. So how do we achieve this? So I'm going to do the same thing except for I'm going to use our same thing as here, except I'm going to use our remesh name as for our toggle as our setting. So I'm just going to put our curly bracket, and then we're going to put remesh and then equals 0, and then put our curly bracket. Now why am I using a 0? Because the toggles, if you know anything about a toggle and coding, it's basically a 0 or 1. It's a true or false boolean. So Now, if I click that apply button, you can see our separator has disappeared. None of our other settings have because we haven't input our hide when. So let's go ahead and just input that into there. Important to note here, if you just click off after you paste into the next setting, it's not actually going to save that. So make sure you click off into a different field of the same parameter before you actually go about clicking off into the next thing. So now if I click apply, you can see all of our settings except for target size has disappeared. Now, if we were to set this to adaptive and then we click the remesh, now it's disappeared, but we want it to actually disappear when we have the target size. But this already has a formula in here, so how do we go about having it react to two different things? So super simple, all we have to do is just paste in the same thing, and then we can click apply and then it'll disappear as well. So it doesn't have to have a and or like an if statement. If you know anything about coding, to have multiple things, multiple like functions, you would need an if statement or like an and, stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about any of that. You just copy and paste in your formula behind that, and then you're all set to go. So if I set this to adaptive, it's going to disappear. So let's go ahead and grab our adaptive settings, go ahead and drag in all of those. And if we click apply, go back to our object level, you can see that we have our settings that disappear based on our settings. But if we click this remesh, we still haven't input our hide when. So we need to make sure that we go ahead and do that for our min size, our max size, our relative density, and then our gradation. Already had it. So now as I uncheck this remesh, everything's disappeared, which is exactly what we want. But what if we just wanted to keep all of these adaptive settings, even if we were set to uniform, just disable them instead of hiding them? So the way we would go about doing that is we just have to take our, if I can select it, take our initial formula, and then we can cut that and just paste it into the disable when. And then if we click apply, you'll see if we go back to uniform now, we have our gradation setting. It's still there, it's just disabled because we don't have it set up to adaptive, and it disappears when we go back to uniform. Or it comes back when we go back to uniform and adaptive. So that's exactly what we would want. That's useful for certain things, whether or not, like mostly with bools, you'll see if I jump in here, this is disabled based off of this check mark. This little toggle turns that on or off. So you wouldn't necessarily want to hide it. You just want to disable it. So it's pretty confusing if you're just starting out on how to actually go about setting up these different formulas and creating these dynamic parameters. But once you get the hang of it, it's not too difficult at all. You just have to make sure you're getting the right thing based on what this different type is, and then input the correct formula, again, based off of what the type is. So not too hard, but it can be a little bit confusing for beginners. I know it took me a little bit to figure out whether or not it was possible, and then how to do it once I figured out it was possible. So hopefully this helped you out. Make sure you check out some of the other tutorials that I have. I got a bunch more on creating HDAs specifically for Cinema 4D, but they will work for anything that the Houdini engine is capable of, or is compatible with, I guess. So you could use it inside of Maya, or 3ds Max I think has it, as well as game engines like Unity and Unreal. So check those out if you're interested in learning more about creating HDAs. Otherwise, hopefully this helped you out, and thank you all for watching.